So guys, this video I've titled How to Get Bigger Legs. So I'm going to regress a little bit with leg training because without a doubt, with all the information out there about bodybuilding, lifting big weights for a lot of people builds big legs, and getting stronger builds big legs. But my stuff's not really aimed at the people who have already got big legs and then they want bigger legs, because that really comes down to variables such as training frequency, it comes down to nutritional interventions, it comes down to actually having the minerals to train hard enough and push hard enough and lift more load or train with more volume. And there are a lot of kind of like intensifying techniques and bodybuilding strategies to take somebody to the next level. But the questions I get asked all the time is, my legs just won't grow, my lateralis muscle won't grow, my medialis muscle won't grow, my legs in general don't overall really grow. And so this video is aimed at those of you that struggle to put size on your legs. And with anyone that I train who is looking to develop a body part, there are other foundational things that you need to learn. And the reason why I'm on this piece of equipment now is because it's the leg extension, but it's one of the best exercises for me to teach people how to fully contract a muscle from a lengthened range through to a fully shortened range, because there's no other exercise in the gym for quads apart from the leg extension that gets the actual quad muscles in a fully shortened position. So what I do with anyone that I teach about leg training is, you have an origin and an insertion of a muscle. So that's basically the length of the muscle. So whether it's attaching into the patellar tendon and up onto the tuberosity, the hip and the femur, this is basically the length of your femur and the attachments of the quadricep muscles that go onto them. So if you have an origin and an insertion, the goal of training your quads should be to bring these muscles together, because just like training the biceps, lengthen range, shorten range. When people struggle to build a muscle, they haven't gone through the early stages of being able to contract the muscle from a lengthened position all the way through under control to a shortened position, because there's so many things that happen when they do exercises. When technically you break down during an exercise, it's because the muscle's very, very weak. And if you watch somebody who has built big legs, generally, they're able to lock into a machine, they're able to maintain tension on a muscle, they're able to place with their own focus and thought where they want that muscle to grow by placing tension there. And as a result, over time, and all the intensifying techniques that bodybuilding brings, their legs will grow, nutrition as well. But the people that don't grow are the people that time and time again try and take little shortcuts with exercises, and they don't know they're taking shortcuts of exercises because you guys don't know what to look out for. So by using the leg extension, first thing I'm going to do is show you what some people do wrong. But before I do that, I'm going to actually just explain to you a little bit about kind of the muscles themselves. So when I talk about extremity execution, which is one of my key fundamentals to physique development. Extremity execution is, can you contract the muscle when it's fully lengthened, right the way to fully shortened? Okay? So fully shortened is right at the top, fully lengthened is from here. So when most people try and do the quad exercise, the first thing they think about is pushing away with the knees. Now realistically, what they're thinking about is, well, they don't really know, training this kind of extremity or this range of the quadriceps. They're thinking of extending the knees. A lot of the time there's external rotation at the hip joint, which means that a lot of the load, because the force comes through, as you can see, is placing a lot more tension on the VMO. So a lot of people are like, oh, my VMOs always hurt when I do this exercise. Well, let's move away from the VMO and think about the rectus femoris and the lateralis. These muscles here, we've got fibers running this way and we've got fibers that are coming in that direction as well. So in order to actually concentrate on these muscles here, first thing we need to do is have the hip joint and the knee joint, because you've got to remember this. The knee is a hinge joint, i.e., It flexes and extends. You don't want all this rotation at the femur. You want it to be able to, at the head of the femur in the hip joint, you want it to be flexing and extending. So the first thing a lot of people do is they cause a lot of problems because they kind of like get some twist at the top. The second thing people do is they, again, think about just pushing the feet away, which means they're initiating, or their conscious thought is coming through the knee joint. So everybody that always says, oh, it creates a lot of shear forces through the knee, well, you could say the same about biceps curls, because if you get down to here and your elbow always hurts, what do you think is the problem? Well, you've not actually got hold of the biceps here, but if you extend your biceps out and the muscle's under tension, you've got no worry about the elbow taking any pressure because you've got the biceps in control of the muscle. Same thing with this. If all you're doing is pushing from the knee joint, then yeah, you're going to have some knee pain. But what if you put your conscious thought into initiating the load from here, which is where you should be thinking about executing the movement from. So you pull down into the pad, contract your glute down into the pad, and you'll see this, look. Initiating. And then when I initiate this muscle here, look, you see it? There. I contract up, using this muscle. And down, 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 down. Now watch what happens when I just push my knee. Not a lot's really going on, okay? And then I contract down here, and I extend. And hopefully, just by seeing that on the video, and Gus can confirm that you probably saw that all right, is that simply by pushing forward, lifting your hips out, this range of the quads gets a little bit of the work. Now thinking about hips in line with your knees, pulling down into the pad, and initiating from the starting point of the muscle, and then thinking about bringing the quad muscles together and contracting as hard as you can, will contract and train a large percentage of the quad muscles by bringing them as short as you can get them. Now, that's some of the first things I want you to think about. The second thing I want you to think about, which is why this prime piece of equipment is key to the development of our clients and myself, especially this year since we got it. If you see here, the loading, I've put it on the top pin. Now what this does is allow, in line with the strength curve and then the profile of the muscle, because from here I'm quite strong. And you'll all know in the gym that when you get to here with any leg extension machine, at the shortest position of contraction, you're actually weak. Now if you got on a standard leg extension machine that doesn't have a variable cam, that doesn't allow for the load to get lighter where you're actually weakest, all you're going to have to do is pull it up to the top. Right? That's all you're going to be able to do. Literally throw it up to the top, which means you've got no contraction of the muscle whatsoever. Whereas with the Prime one, by placing the load at the top, and we can use different loading strategies to train the muscle in different ranges, but especially for beginners and intermediate people, being able to get to here and then the load gets slightly lighter where my muscles get weaker, allows me to fully shorten the quad muscles, which means I can keep my glutes locked down, which means I can keep tension on my quads, which ultimately means I'm going to grow bigger quad muscles because I'm training more of them. If I then take the loading down to the middle, what I want you to see here is, if you look at the distance from, this is the axis of rotation, the distance from here gets considerably shorter when this load gets higher. If you look at the medium pin, when I get to about here, it's actually not too dissimilar to when it all started off. So what that means is that load in the middle range would would stay relatively heavy in that middle range, so I can train the mid-range of the fibers. And then at the bottom, it's actually a little bit lighter, but then it gets a little bit heavier. So you can actually switch it round. So by changing all the loading parameters of this machine means I can train different parts of the strength curve of the muscle, but most importantly to you watching this, by using the Prime one, I can train where I'm very, very weak, which again, I have the biggest potential to develop. So then moving on from that, we're going to go to the hack squat in a second. Then you can actually look at all the variables with training. Once you learn how to contract a muscle from the extremities, learn how to train and get strong at those extremities, then you can apply all the different variables. We don't just mean you're going to squeeze the muscle and stay there, but you can actually train a muscle through its entirety and have more opportunity to grow. Let's take you over to the hack squat and show you something a little bit different. So guys, moving on from the leg extension, and I'll just recap the reason why I use the leg extension to explain to you why it's so important to train at the extremities is because one, you could see me doing it, two, I could give you some cues, and three, it's one of the key exercises to train where you're very, very weak. Then once you've learnt that and mastered that, then you can progress and move on to something such as the hack squat. Now, everybody that we teach, we use a huge variation of cues. Now, the hack squat is something that so many people get wrong. Why? Because the first thing that they do when they get in the hack squat is they think, I've just got to move the weight from A to B. But the goal when you're trying to develop your legs is first and foremost keeping tension in the quad muscles. Second of all, thinking, where do I want tension in the quad muscles? And third thing is keeping the cues that I'm going to give you in a second, nailed down. When most people do the hack, first and foremost, they have no conscious awareness of what's happening at the knee. So a lot of people are always going to be quite weak, especially around the glutes, lateralis. A lot of people tend to find that when they come down to the hack, they push through the center of the knees, the vastus medialis muscles. So they come down from here, they go in, oh, they bring the knees together and they push out. So what they'll find is that the adductors kick in a little bit, the VMOs kick in, and when you stand with someone with their shorts off, they've got very, very little development on the lateralis. What's the trick? Well, a lot of people say toes out, a lot of people say narrow, a lot of people say wide. They're all good and well. The problem is, even going out with somebody that knocks their knees in is pointless, okay? So when I put my feet in line with my hips, the first thing I want to think about, especially using this exercise from my perspective, is I want to be placing a lot of tension laterally, all right? So my conscious thought is to not allow my knees to knock in, it's getting some initiation and intention to place tension here. So away from the knees, slightly externally rotating the hips, not to this point where the knees are out, but your conscious thought is actually initiating on the lateralis muscles. And then from this position here, we're going to drive the lower back into the pad. And when we get to the bottom, a lot of people consciously think about the hips coming up, pushing against the shoulder pads. What I want you to do at the bottom is to drive the floor away from you, and as a result, the pad will come up. So rather than coming down, lifting the heels up and thinking, oh shit, and coming up, and then you get all this bum wiggling, that means that you've lost a lot of the tension in the quad muscles. So when you come down to the bottom, the tension's on the quad and the lateralis, which will displace the load throughout the quads. The lower back is being driven backwards, and then I'm pushing to the floor, driving into my quads. Now, especially lateralis. See, I'm here, nothing, placing conscious intent out lateral. Remember, these fibers are coming in this direction, so if they're here, placing that lateral intent means that I can consciously contract these muscles together. If they're here, all you're going to be doing is pushing towards the midline and very minimal loading through the outside. So, next thing you need to think about is, am I being man enough and training my quads through a fuller range of movement, or am I getting to here and going, oh, lifting my heels up, and then, oh, my back's lifted off, and then I'm wiggling around? Because guys, you're going to lose the ability of the tension. So drop your ego. If you can't do it with any weight, make sure you can contract your quads properly by driving your hips backwards, which will initiate from here, fully lengthen the quads from this position here, and then you're going to drive, no lockout. Tension, down, no lockout, drive, lower back, pushing the foot away. And in doing that, you're gonna maintain tension on your quads. 1, for a lot longer, 2, in the right places, and 3, I know you're gonna struggle because you're gonna be training your quads a lot more intensely than you would have done before, but you're gonna be training them through a fuller range of movement because you're not trying to jump away at any point from actually what's difficult. So the leg extension and the hat squat, 2 key pointers that I go through with people. Learn how to train from the extremities, focus on all the cues, start to build your strength up, keep tension in the quads, and then get bloody strong, and you will grow.